Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kingsmen Live. Joining me today, COO of the LA Kings, Kelly Cheeseman, and Blake Bolden, AHL Scout and Growth and Inclusion Specialist. Kelly, how are you doing today?
Good, Jess. Thanks for having me.
Blake, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, we're here today to talk about not only the Alliance with 2 1s instead of L's, the 11 teams in the LA market. That's the Anaheim Ducks, the Los Angeles Angels, the Chargers, the Clippers, the Dodgers, the Los Angeles Football Club, the LA Galaxy, the LA Lakers, the Los Angeles Rams, the Sparks, and of course the Kings, but also the Kings Inclusion Initiative. Kelly, let's start with you. Getting those 11 organizations to pull in one direction and just getting 11 people in a room or on a call, I suppose, in 2020 alone has to be difficult. How long has this been in the works, and who really spearheaded this initiative?
You know, you're right. It is challenging. I mean, it's almost exhausting to listen to you just try to list them all off in one sentence or one phrase there. You know, all 11 teams, really since the beginning of COVID, we've been kind of pulling in the same direction on a number of things in terms of, you know, just sharing best practices, having conversations about how we're approaching the market, how we're dealing with fans. And, you know, it's just been an active conversation, something that's been incredibly refreshing to have. And it really has really never happened, you know, and this took about 6 weeks to come together. And as you know, the protest and everything really kind of erupted after you know, the unfortunate incident of the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and everything was really kind of, you know, at its highest level here in LA. I think it was one Sunday 6 weeks ago. You know, the chat kind of, you know, lit up and said, "Hey, let's get together at 6 o'clock and talk about how we can, you know, approach this as, you know, in the world of sports." And, you know, it was brought up during the press conference by Tom Penn from LAFC. And the conversation was, if sports not, you know, who else, you know, in terms of making an impact and at least leading a dialogue in LA. LA is a complicated market, but we really wanted to make a difference. But we quickly realized we needed to bring some other voices into the conversation. And that's when we brought in some outside resources like Renata and some other people from our organization like Blake and others across, you know, all the teams to really have a conversation about how we could approach it.
Before we get to Blake, I want to welcome everybody watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and remind you that if you want to have your questions read, if you want to have an opportunity to ask something of Kelly or Blake, you do need to join us on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/LA Kings. Blake, you were hired recently as an AHL scout or a professional scout by the LA Kings. I'm assuming that when you were initially hired, there wasn't any thought of adding the title Growth and Inclusion Specialist, and the Alliance probably had not yet begun to be discussed. So how exciting was it for you to have those duties added to your title?
Well, let me just say that when I first started 6 months ago, like you're saying, I had no idea that the city was going to erupt, the country was going to erupt, but I do give it to Cheese and Luke Robitaille, who initially just came to me as soon as I was hired and say, "Hey, listen, you are a pillar in our sport. You're a role model for those of color and females and everyone." And they really gave me the confidence to want to take on a role such as the Growth and Inclusion Specialist. And I'm just really privileged to be here. And it's been an exciting journey thus far. And I think with the Alliance and with our initiative, we're going to accomplish many things in the future.
When I was a kid growing up in LA, well, Long Beach, but in the LA market, my family is from Canada. So for me, there was an easy access point to the sport. My dad would take me to games. And I never really cared about the notion of growing the game, right? I'd see rule changes. I'd see PR releases. I'd see people talking about, we've got to grow the game. We've got to expand the fan base. And I would always shrug and say, like, well, why do I care? I get to go to games. I get to see it on TV. As I've gotten older and I've realized not only how physically removed from the sort of center of the hockey universe LA is, but as I've also gotten perspective on my own opportunities and my own place in the world, I realize how important it is that I had somebody to open the door to the game for me. So I'm curious from your personal perspective, Blake, how important it is to any individual or kid or somebody who wants to get into the sport, how important it is to have somebody open the door to them or to help them through the gate.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important because that's just what's fair. A kid shouldn't be denied what they want to do if that's something that inspires them. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to close that gap. But from personal experience, I just stumbled into the game of ice hockey just by knowing a person that loved the sport and by going to the games. And from there, I said, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I need to learn how to play this game. And I just discovered little breadcrumbs, people telling me, okay, well, now you have to sign up for this, and now you have to get this stick, and now you have to do that. So it's helpful to have an organization and someone who has the resources to give you that path and that blueprint to say, hey, okay, well, this is what we want. We want you to come and we want you to join our team, because the more the merrier. And LA is one of the most diverse places, I would say, in the world. And I think our fan base should depict that in the stands and the children that are playing.
So, Kelly, we know we want to grow the sport. We know we want to work on inclusion, but we want to make sure if we grow the sport that we're growing something worthy, right? That you're growing something good. So as an organization, the Kings and the Alliance, how do you do that? How do you make sure that as you're growing with a mind towards growing well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jess. I mean, I don't think we have all those answers yet, but it starts with a couple things, equity and opportunity and, on and off ice activities, representation, us in our front office, making sure that we're hiring a more diverse workforce and growing that opportunity, but also growing that off the ice and making sure we have equitable opportunities in youth hockey, so that the kids and the parents have an environment that they can come into, feel welcome, and then having opportunities for those kids to and families to come to the games and enjoy their experience at Staples Center and see the finished product. I think that's ultimately where you create role models and experiences, and when we're all celebrating that next Stanley Cup, that parade represents all of LA, and that's our vision. We want to grow. We want to have a better representation of all of LA and really grow the fan base. So there's a lot of steps to that. There's different approaches that we need to take, in youth hockey and ice sports to create equitable experiences and accountability. And we're going to need a lot of partners, and we know that. And it's a critical initiative for the National Hockey League. It needs to be a critical initiative for USA Hockey and Hockey Canada. And then our players on the NHL level, starting with the leadership of the Hockey Diversity Alliance and the group of, Black players that have aligned together, need to work with their teammates to create role model experiences so that kids playing the game of all races feel safe to speak up and create a safe environment so that their teammates can grow. And it just, in the end, I think we want to look back 5-10 years from now and say we made a difference.
Sports, well, life in general, right? It's an old cliche. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think that's nowhere truer than in professional sports, right? Where relationships can be formed in one stage, whether it's, juniors or the NCAA, and then it moves on to the AHL. And you see it, general managers hire people they've worked with before, coaches hire people they've worked with before, and a huge part of the employee pool comes from the sport itself. It feels like hockey faces a specific challenge, given that the demographics of the Players Association is not as diverse as other sports. So I'll ask this of both of you. Kelly, are there any goals or specific ways that the Alliance is hoping to combat those issues?
Yeah, like I said, just a minute ago, representation in the front office is a critical issue for all sports organizations. You touched on something that we've been discussing a lot lately. Like, we're too, centered amongst, getting referrals for people getting, jobs within sports. And I think that is a huge, huge issue. A big part of the alliance and a big part of the commitment for all of the teams is to change that and to, look at more opportunities for and adding internships and adding job shadowing programs, to making, percentage growth changes in terms of, more diverse workforces. Specifically with the Kings, our goal is to increase our diversity workforce by 10% over the next 5 years. And that'll change the way that you can approach the marketplace, because, you have to have the experience and you have to have the input of what that life experience is to even know how to approach, talking to that fan base. So it's a critical issue, and it's something that needs to change flat out.
Blake, any thoughts on how you might be able to help in that fight in your role with the Kings?
Yeah, well, first thought is me just representing the Kings, being who I am in the sport, being the first Black African-American player to play professional hockey. And then on top of that, being the first Black woman to be a scout. As Cheese has mentioned, representation is key. And I am very passionate and have been very passionate my entire career to get out and speak to those young kids that might want to try the sport. And I just ask that the fans can be open-minded and compassionate and embrace all of the newness that we're trying to bring about our organization to promote positive change and equal the playing field for everybody.
You mentioned the fans. Anybody who pays attention to social media knows you never read the comments. But I'm an idiot. I read the comments. So Kelly, what do you say to the inevitable sort of angry feedback that says, stick to sports, or, this is all too much and I don't want to hear about it? What's your response to that?
I'd say open your mind. Look, maybe we're not right for you. I'm not saying that I want to ever turn away fans, but if you realize where sports is at these days, the most critical thing or not the most, but, obviously the first thing for us is creating a great product on the ice, and we have a great track record there. Obviously we've, got a few cups over our shoulders here over the last few years, and we're on a great path with our development team and our prospect pool right now, and the second overall pick coming in. So we're going to create a great on ice product, but off the ice, supporting our community is a number one to growing as a organization, and we're always going to be there doing that, and we always have been. And I think it's important that fans realize that in sports collectively, I don't know one organization that doesn't make it a priority. So if that's, where fans are thinking, they're going to have a hard time finding a sport to support that doesn't focus on that. So I think it's time for everybody to open their minds, listen, learn, gain different perspectives across the board. But I think more passionately, and this is where I'm at, Jesse, as the Los Angeles Kings, going back for 53 years now, we're an organization that's grown from within the city, and we've always been a scrappy fan base that had to introduce new fans to grow within Los Angeles in a non-traditional hockey market. And, we grew from people bringing new fans to the game and introducing the sport the way that, you, Jesse, and you, Blake, both just talked about, your own personal experiences. And I think too much, and we've heard too much of this feedback over the last 5 years, that as new fans came in and, created new experiences, and they may have been new to the game because they got introduced by the championship moments, that too often they weren't welcomed by the old fan base. And that's wrong. And we need to change that, because the old fan base was built based off of, being welcomed and brought into a new experience. And, whatever issue we're tackling at this point, and I'm getting a little bit long-winded, but whatever issue we're tackling at this point, like, we got to grow our fan base, and we need our fans to be a part of this and be a part of all aspects of who we are. And that's who we are going to be at the Kings. And if that's not who you are, then sorry.
Like, I want to add a twist to the same question to you, as not only a member of a front office, but also as an athlete who's played in these leagues and who's played in these games. How infuriating is it to have people say, we're interested in what you can do physically on the ice, but we don't want to hear about what you feel about it or think about it or how it might affect you?
It's ridiculous. I mean, ask LeBron James. It's ridiculous. As a player, I have flashbacks of just being on the ice and my parents having to deal with ignorant comments, or their children saying those ignorant comments to me on the ice. It starts, and then it spreads, and we want to stop that. We want to build inclusion, and it's hurtful, and evolution is key. We have to grow, and we have to grow together. And if that takes weeding out the people that aren't a good fit, then, as Cheese said, sorry.
Every time the Super Bowl trophy is awarded, or the NBA championships are crowned, or the Major League or the World Series happens, they bring out the trophy, and and then there's a huge flood of tweets and posts on Facebook of people saying, well, the NHL, the Stanley Cup is handed directly to the players, and this is why hockey's great, whether it's the handshake lines or the way the trophy is awarded. And I would like for all fans to sort of think about that sentiment that we might have of loving our game and thinking our game is the best. We should back that up, right? With wanting the game to be the best for everybody. I mean, that feels maybe a little oversimplistic, but am I sort of coming close to what we're getting towards, Kelly?
Gave me chills.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thanks.
I think you're right, Jess. Like, I think we've got a lot of pride in our sport. Luke and I have talked about it a lot. Like, we both, I grew up on different sides of the game. I grew up as a kid in Minnesota that started playing hockey, from almost the time I could walk. And, we all know Luke's story, and they aren't the same. But, we've got a lot of pride in the experiences that we've had. But, I think if our eyes were really opened up to, the ability to grow the game and think about what hockey culture is, and it's got to change, and so that there is a bridge to that experience, and we can really represent the cities in which we play. We're playing very diverse cities, but I mean, how many times do you watch, like, us as hockey fans, and you watch the Stanley Cup finals, and we're very much into it, and we're hearing about the ratings on NBC and all that, and you're like, oh man, it's growing, but it's not even a blip on the radar, to where it should be. And that's because we need to grow. We need to grow, and become more diverse and become more welcoming. And that takes everybody leaning in and changing, from the coaches and the front offices to the players, to the NHL front office, to the fans. Everything has to change to grow as a league and grow as a sport. And then people won't have to, fight amongst their friends in the community as to, why are you a hockey fan? Why do you like hockey? It's how many, fans in LA have to defend themselves as to being hockey fans. And that's what's made us scrappy as a fan base. And that's what's made us really passionate as a growing fan base for 53 years. But our vision is, look, I'd like our parade to look just like the Lakers parade, 3 million people. Ours was 500,000 people, it takes everybody leaning in and being, being a part of this and understanding, like, you can't push people away saying, you don't know anything about this. That's the wrong approach.
There's a number of potholes and ways that conversations like these can get hinky. So I apologize if I phrase the next question inappropriately, Blake. But I'm curious. And we'll let you guys go soon. I promise. I kept you a little bit longer than I said I would.
Stay here for the next hour, Jesse.
I tuned into the Black Girl Hockey Club forum. Forum may not be the right word, but on YouTube a few weeks back, and I was fascinated by the conversation, particularly the notion that a hockey game is, as it was described, I think, very clearly a white space. And so I apologize for putting you on the spot to speak for everybody and how to fix something that can't be fixed in a simple conversation. Yeah. But I'm curious, there are a million things that go into that reality, right? Whether it's culture, demographics, history, organizational bias, et cetera, et cetera. But what is just the simplest, smallest thing that you might ask of a fan like me to help shift that feeling inside a professional hockey game?
I would say something you could do is bring a diverse friend to the game. Bring someone that is a huge basketball, soccer, any other kind of fan and say, come over here and watch this game and let me blow your mind, and tell your friends that might not be hockey friends or fans to come as well. I think that is an action that we can do. And I've gone to plenty games and actually have picked out Black people in the stands before and been like, oh my gosh, there's a Black person in the stands. That's amazing. I'm not the only one. So imagine if that weren't a thing and it was just a normal scenery to have a couple Black people, a few Black people in this section and up there and around. And, I think that's going to change. I think that's what we want and that's what we need. So bring your friends, tell them to pull up.
Well, Austin, I want to thank both of you for joining me. As I said, when I was a younger guy, I didn't care about growing the game. But now, Kelly, hearing you talk about wanting to see a Kings Stanley Cup parade that rivals the Lakers or the Dodgers or any other, like Kansas City, where half the half the state turns out to celebrate a Chiefs Super Bowl. We're looking forward to that. Blake, thank you very much for joining us. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for having me.
Kelly, Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jess. I promise we'll have that parade.
Ooh, yeah, I'm ready.
Let me talk to Rob and Luke about it first, though.
Perfect. All right. I'll do my part.
Thanks, everyone.
It's one all, one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
We just hang up?
That was a word from Manscaped. Support for all the Kings men comes from Manscaped. It is an official partner of the LA Kings. Thanks to this revolutionary company, manscaping accidents are a thing of the past. Just get yourself the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. Inside, you'll find products like their Lawnmower 3.0, which has advanced skin-safe technology, so this trimmer won't cut you. Everything you need to keep trimmed and smelling nice is in the Perfect Package 3.0. You can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code KINGSMEN at manscaped.com. That's manscaped.com, and use the word, and it is just one word, KINGSMEN. So huge thanks to Kelly Cheeseman and to Blake Bolden with the Alliance and the Kings Inclusivity Project. But we've got real hockey coming back, finally, hopefully. The NHL and the NHLPA have agreed to expand the CBA. We will be getting into some of the details of that because there's a lot coming. But for now, these are the critical dates that have been agreed to. Training camps have already opened, as I'm sure all of you know. The teams will travel to Edmonton and Toronto on July 26th. There'll be 3 days of exhibition games. We'll get to that schedule in a second. Then August 1st, the qualifying round begins. I mean, that is less than 2 weeks away, exactly 2 weeks away. That's when hockey starts, guys. Phase 2 of the NHL Draft Lottery will be conducted at the end of the qualifying round. Obviously, we'll need to know which 8 teams lost, and we'll have just over 12% chance of winning the number 1 overall pick in the draft lottery. We all know how we feel about that. Then the first round of the playoffs begins on August 11th. Second round begins on August 25th. The conference finals begin on September 8th in Edmonton. Stanley Cup finals begin September 22nd, with October 4th being the last possible day of the final. And then the day Kings fans are waiting for with bated breath, October 9th will be the first round of the NHL draft, with the remaining rounds happening on Saturday, October 10th. The Kings have the second overall pick, as well as 3 picks in the second round. And don't worry, we're going to be doing plenty of prospect reports and discussions about the draft in the following months leading up to that draft on October 9th. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the exhibition games, because those are the first 3 days of hockey. July 28th, Tuesday, we have 3 games, and it's just wall-to-wall hockey. And then Wednesday, it looks like we've got 6 games, and then Thursday again, following up with 3 games. I'm so happy. I mean, I just don't know how else to express it than to, I mean, look at that. That's what, 12 games and 3. That's just tremendous. I miss hockey, you guys. I'm so excited to have it back. There will be a lot of stories obviously coming out about some players holding out, different matchups. The qualifying rounds should be fascinating. There will also be the round robin games between the top seeds who don't have to participate in the qualifying rounds to determine final seeding. Before that first round starts, like I said, we are going to get into the details about the CBA. That's the collective bargaining agreement for those who don't speak hockey legalese. Briefly, the real gist of it is that the salary cap won't be growing anytime soon. That bodes well for the Kings. Most of the Kings' high-priced players, like Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty, I would argue are worth their contracts, whereas the bulk of the team, really, it's a young team, so they're coming in on entry-level deals, or they're guys like Iafallo and Kempe who are not huge cap hits. So I think it suits the Kings particularly well. Again, we will be doing player evaluations. We'll be talking about the CBA, how it impacts the Kings. There's, of course, the Seattle expansion draft to worry about next season. There's the start date of next season. Training camps may open in November. The 2020-21 season may begin in December. All of that is subject to change, obviously. Tentatively, we are going to have a guest next week who should have a ton of insight on all of that. But for now, I want to thank all of you for joining us. I want to thank you for watching us. Thanks to Kelly Cheeseman and Blake Bolden for joining us. Thanks to everybody at the Kings for making this show possible. And thanks to all of you for watching. We will be back next week with Carlin Bathe and a very special guest to break down the CBA and hopefully tell some stories about Kings history. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll talk to you next week.